Well, first of all, you both look fantastic.
Thank you.
You both look great.
The bat-shaped throne sat empty under the Birmingham lights as 45,000 fans held their breath. 17 days before his death, Ozzy Osbourne was facing the fight of his life. Not against addiction, not against critics, but against a $5 million tax debt that threatened to tarnish everything he'd built over 5 decades in music. What happened next wasn't just a farewell concert. It was the most expensive lesson in crisis management ever performed on stage. July 5th, 2025, Villa Park Stadium in Birmingham, England, the same city where 4 working-class kids formed Black Sabbath in 1968 and accidentally invented heavy metal. But this wasn't about nostalgia. Hidden behind the pyrotechnics and guitar solos was a masterclass in turning personal disaster into public triumph, taught by a 76-year-old man who could barely walk but refused to quit fighting. The numbers tell the real story. 2 IRS liens, $700,000 filed in the 2023, and a crushing $4.3 million. Millions of fans around the world saw only the Prince of Darkness returning for one last bow. Ozzy was privately grappling with over $5 million in federal tax debt. His touring days had ended in 2023 when his body finally surrendered to Parkinson's disease, spinal injuries, and decades of punishment. The man who once bit the head off a bat on stage couldn't even walk to his own mailbox. Most people facing terminal illness and crushing debt would retreat into privacy, maybe hire lawyers to negotiate payment plans, perhaps sell assets quietly to settle accounts. Ozzy chose the opposite path. He organized the most ambitious charity concert in rock history, featuring Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Tool, and Pantera, all performing for free. When the final numbers came in, the Back to the Beginning concert had raised $190 million for charity, making it the highest-grossing benefit event in history. Here's where the story becomes a business education masterpiece. When you're facing a crisis that seems impossible to solve, sometimes the answer isn't to get smaller, it's to get bigger than anyone expects. Ozzy couldn't pay his own debts, so he focused on helping others pay theirs. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually sophisticated crisis psychology. Instead of the narrative being, wealthy rocker dies owing millions in taxes, it became, dying legend raises record-breaking funds for sick children and Parkinson's research. The strategic thinking becomes clear when you understand the timeline. Tom Morello, Rage Against the Machine's guitarist who served as musical director, revealed that planning began over a year earlier. This wasn't a desperate last-minute decision. It was carefully orchestrated crisis management. While his tax troubles were mounting, Ozzy and his team were building something that would completely reframe how the world remembered him. The business model he created for this final performance reveals even deeper strategic thinking. He leveraged his reputation to attract the biggest names in metal, who performed for free because of the charitable cause. He used his hometown connection, Birmingham, where Black Sabbath formed in 1968, to create emotional resonance that justified premium ticket prices. He timed it perfectly as his final bow to maximize media attention and global streaming demand. The results were staggering. All 45,000 tickets sold out in 16 minutes, with 150,000 people waiting in the virtual queue. The pay-per-view stream peaked at 5.8 million concurrent viewers worldwide, generating millions in additional revenue. The total economic impact on Birmingham was estimated at £20 million, with 300,000 tourists visiting for the weekend. One man's final performance became a massive economic engine for an entire region. But here's where Ozzy's strategy transcends simple crisis management. and enters the realm of legacy protection. The concert wasn't just about raising money. It was about controlling the narrative around his death. Every major news outlet that covered his passing led with the charity concert, not the tax debt. The headline became "Rock Legend Dies After Raising $190 Million for Charity," not "Ozzy Osbourne Dies Owing Millions to IRS." This teaches us something profound about reputation management in crisis situations. When you can't fix the problem immediately, you can often redirect attention to something more meaningful. When you can't solve your financial troubles right away, you can demonstrate your values through other actions. The tax debt remained, but it became a footnote to a much larger story about courage and generosity. The performance itself revealed another layer of strategic thinking. Ozzy's Parkinson's had progressed to the point where he could no longer stand or walk unaided. Instead of canceling or making excuses, he designed the entire show around his limitations. The bat-shaped throne wasn't just a prop. It was adaptive equipment that allowed him to perform despite his physical constraints. He turned his biggest weakness into his most memorable visual element. "It's so good to be on this fucking stage, you have no idea," he told the crowd as he emerged on the throne, visibly emotional. Those weren't just words of gratitude. They were the words of a man who had found a way to transform personal limitation into public inspiration. An insider later revealed that his Parkinson's has progressed and he's in a great deal of pain. But instead of resting, he pushed himself to make this happen. No one could tell him otherwise. He wanted this for his fans and himself. The financial education hidden in this story becomes clear when you examine the broader context. And while Ozzy faced personal tax troubles, his estate was worth an estimated $220 to $230 million. The tax debt, while substantial for most people, represented less than 3% of his total wealth. The real risk wasn't bankruptcy. It was reputation damage that could affect his family's inheritance and his own legacy. The concert footage is being edited into a 100-minute film called Back to the Beginning, Ozzy's Final Bow, for theatrical release in 2026. His memoir, Last Rites, scheduled for October 2025 release, details the planning and emotional weight of this final performance. Both will generate additional revenue for his estate while cementing the charitable narrative around his final act. But the most powerful lesson from Ozzy's final performance isn't about money, taxes, or even legacy protection. It's about the fundamental choice we all face when crisis strikes. Do we retreat into our problems, or do we find ways to transcend them by focusing on something larger than ourselves? Ozzy chose transcendence. He took a personal crisis and transformed it into public good. He used his limitations as inspiration rather than excuses. He leveraged his final moments of strength to create something that will outlast both his debt and his death. The $5 million tax bill will eventually be settled by his estate. The $190 million raised for charity will continue helping sick children and funding Parkinson's research for decades to come. Here's what Ozzy's final bow teaches every entrepreneur, executive, parent, and dreamer facing their own impossible situations. Your crisis doesn't define you. Your response to it does. Your limitations don't determine your impact. Your determination does. Your problems don't dictate your legacy. Your priorities do. When the IRS comes calling, when your health fails, when your income disappears, when everything seems hopeless, remember the man who couldn't walk but refused to quit performing. Remember that sometimes the biggest impact comes from the smallest stage. Remember that your final act might be your most important one. Ozzy Osbourne died 17 days after that concert, but he didn't die defeated. He died having created the highest-grossing charity concert in history. He died having protected his family's reputation and secured his own legacy. He died having turned personal crisis into public triumph. Most importantly, he died having shown all of us that no matter how dark things get, we always have the choice to create light for others.